everyone. Welcome back. Happy New Year to Commissioner Wilson's virtual office hours. Hi, Commissioner.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Hi, how you doing? How you feeling?
I am feeling good. How about you all?
Very, very good. This holiday was nice and calm. We were able to get a little bit of rest, and now we're back at work, really excited to kick off 2022.
It's so strange, right? Because it feels like this time last year was 17 years ago, but also like a couple of weeks ago. Like this year was such a whirlwind and it was so busy. There was so much going on, but we're so excited about 2022.
Yeah. Well, Hannah is also here with us, the policy aide of District 1. How you doing, Hannah?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. Had a lovely break as well. Like you said, I got to work while some other people took off, so I got to catch up on everything, and it was very relaxing.
Let me tell you, can I just say that I realize also, because we've spent so much intensive time together in 2021, that if we go like we have for several days without seeing each other, I get withdrawals. I'm like, I'm 21 that
I'm having
Hannah and Lee withdrawals. I miss you all terribly. So this is awesome to see
like,
your beautiful faces here today and to catch up before we move into the next part of our craziness.
Yeah. Well, for everyone watching, and for those of you who are new, who just started following this page, welcome. You don't have to live in District 1 to watch the virtual office hours. This is really Commissioner Wilson's opportunity to give a deep dive on things that are coming to the Board of County Commission meetings and any updates that are relevant to everyone in Central Florida, especially those who live in Orange County. So.
Right. I was going to say, I don't know if we've ever put anything off limits. I mean, there are things that I think are more interesting to some people out there than others. And District 1 is certainly our home and our duty and our responsibility. But yeah, we want to make sure that we're opening the dialogue, no matter what the subject matter. And if we don't know the answer, then we dig around and we try to find it and we come back.
Yeah, so we encourage everybody to leave your comments in the comment box below, or you can also email district1@ocfl.net. At the end of the year in 2021, Hannah and I had the opportunity to kind of get in front of the camera when the commissioner was away and just kind of share our love for her and giving us this opportunity to be a part of this incredible team. While also talking about our personal whys behind working in local government and our excitements for 2022, while reflecting on what we were able to accomplish in 2021. So Commissioner, we're going to ask you your favorite moments through 2021 and also what you look forward to in 2022. But first, we definitely have to give an update on the COVID numbers right now.
I wish that we weren't doing this anymore. I wish that it was gone. Unfortunately, right now with this variant, Omicron variant, it seems like we are in another surge. And the hope is, from the most recent information that I've read, that we are seeing the peak of the surge right now. Our testing numbers are very, very high. And I know there's a lot of frustration out there right now to try to find home tests, to try to get into testing locations. And it is truly a supply and demand issue. I want to make sure I'm being super clear about the county's role. We are really working so hard to try to provide the services we can. We're not getting a ton of support from the state. There are obviously, sometimes there's different channels of support that a county government gets. Federal government can directly fund or support. The state can directly fund or support. And there seems to be a very big disconnect between what the priorities right now in the governor's office are and what the actual experience of the citizens of Orange County are. I think it was in the news this morning that Orange County now has the highest rate of positivity of any county in the state. And so what that tells us is a couple of things. One, that we're seeing that surge of Omicron. Two, that people are getting tested because they want to make sure that they're not exposing other people. And if you are somebody that falls in that category, thank you. Thank you for caring enough to continue to monitor this, to get tested. If you have been exposed or if you have symptoms, in full personal disclosure, as a fully vaccinated family, one of my nuclear family tested positive for COVID last week. So we are also quarantining and making sure that we're not exposing anyone else and getting through this time and trying to make sure that we are being good neighbors and friends to people in our community. I think that for me, there was a lot of anxiety because having children and having some elderly family members, and this being the holidays, that anxiety that strikes you about, oh, did we already expose someone? The reality of it is that it seems that because we're all vaccinated and boosted, that it's been not much more than a head cold with a mild fever, because it's a breakthrough infection, and it seems to be pretty short-lived. So I feel grateful for that vaccination protection. I feel grateful that we have a place to be while we're waiting for this sort of storm to go over. And I'm grateful for the ability to do my job remotely so that I can still communicate with you all and with the public. And
yeah, I mean, I just want to extend my sympathy. First of all, I'm very happy to hear that you and your family are safe and quarantining and healthy and vaccinated. That's that's a big relief. But I also want to extend my sympathy to those of you who are out there right now, either sick or experiencing COVID through a loved one, even those who might not have COVID, but can't get a doctor's appointment right now, or are struggling with another ailment that they can't really tend to because of their fears of walking into a hospital right now. I think we look at the numbers sometimes and we immediately just say, oh, this is how many deaths or how many cases have come from COVID, and they try to rationalize it in some way. But there's a lot of numbers that aren't being told of the people who are struggling with something that they just can't tend to right now because COVID is running so rampant.
You're exactly right. And I think some of those things, sadly, we're going to end up having, probably more information on the other side of this about some of the diagnoses that people were afraid to get, go in and get, or screenings. And so, I would encourage anybody who's out there to make sure that they are staying in touch with their healthcare provider, even if it is by a televisit. And I know that so many of the healthcare providers out there are really have gotten more flexible in the ways that they're communicating with their patients. And if you have any questions about, something that may be affected by this, please reach out. We can definitely get you in touch with some support services. The county has so many departments that can assist. And if they can't assist, we also have nonprofit partners. I know mental health, we talk about the impacts on people's anxiety and depression and being isolated. And, on the Orange County website, there are some contacts. And if you want to reach out to us, we can also help you get in touch with mental health resources so that you're not going through this alone if you need to talk to somebody about some of the concerns or anxieties that are bubbling up. And I think also having, like we were talking about the young people and school, and, really showing some grace right now to our teachers and our teaching staff and our principals and everybody that's really just trying to get through each day, knowing that it still isn't normal. We still aren't, we aren't back to what I would have hoped we could have been back to. I think everybody that gets vaccinated helps get us closer. I think everybody who pays attention to their signs and symptoms and tries really hard to make sure they're not infecting other people, they help get us closer. But we still have to offer some grace and some kindness to everyone around us through this period. Well, always.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been trying to be extra sugary sweet to everyone around me, even if I pop in the grocery store or take a constituent phone call, just trying to take a moment of pause to ask them how they're doing and really genuinely mean it. Especially since, put COVID and all of the health concerns to the side for just 1 second, we are experiencing a lot of staff shortages across many different industries. And I really feel for local governments all the way up to federal level and OCPS for the added stress of having to just function with COVID running rampant, but also so many staff shortages, so many vacancies in positions, but also many people also calling out sick right now. And so these are just very stressful.
It is. And there's not an easy answer, right? Because we want people who are, if someone is symptomatic, we want them to make sure that they're staying home and being safe. And so they're doing the right thing by doing that. And at the same time, we sort of want whatever that service is to get done. And so, I know that people in every department at the county are really stretched so thin in trying to make sure that they're reaching deadlines that have been laid out way before we understood what this Omicron surge was going to look like. And, even the idea of trying to fill positions, well, it requires a fully staffed HR office to make sure that somebody has been screened and properly trained to take a position. So even that can't be sort of an overnight switch. And so that patience, generosity of your spirit and time is something that we're all going to have to be aware of.
Mhm. Well, we definitely will keep constituents posted on COVID numbers, emergency rental assistance programs. If you have any questions or if you've been hit particularly hard by COVID, please email district1@ocfl.net, and we'll put resources in the chat, and we'll be sharing it all throughout every social media channel that we have. Also, if you can, please go to NicoleWilson.org and sign up for the newsletter that Hannah got a lot of praise recently over the holiday break for her incredible policy updates through the newsletter as well.
Yeah, and a quick reminder, we still have 3 open testing sites. I know they have been long waits. I know it's been very inconvenient, but just remember, this is your county operation. So we have only so many locations that we can choose from. And then the resources that we have are county resources. So we are not an arm of something federally right now. And so, just trying to be patient with the people that are working at those testing sites. They're doing the best they can. And I appreciate everyone who is interested enough in their status to go to those. So thank you for doing that. And if we have any updates of either added locations or hours or anything, we will make sure to get that information out as soon as possible.
Well, let's chat a little bit about your favorite moments in 2021.
Oh my gosh, my favorite moments in 2021. I think there's so many, right? But there are the days that our numbers were coming down and interesting and much needed ordinances were coming into the county commission chambers, like the backyard chicken ordinance, and seeing people from our community come and advocate for the things that they feel passionately about. I was really worried coming into office that I wouldn't get to see that type of community engagement. So whether they were for or against, I still was so grateful to see the type of discourse, civil discourse, that takes place before one of those ordinance updates. So yeah, the backyard chickens was a big one. And I know that was something that was worked on for years and years by the people who are, that know how important that sustainability component is. I think the retail pet store ban now, don't get me wrong, we have a lot of work to do in that realm of animal welfare, but this one was a long time coming. And there were so many people that really did the heavy lift. And it was such a huge victory for that group of people to see that get over the finish line. I don't know, Hannah, my policy person over there, what do you think? What are some of the big ones on the top of your list?
It can be hard to pick because in so much gratitude, there really are so many things that have happened. But Green Place is definitely a top pick. And I think backyard chickens is up there. Puppy retail pet sale ban is also definitely up there, even though it's being challenged by the state right now.
Okay.
And so much more. And so much stuff was started this year or this past year that we get to kind of move forward into as soon as Tuesday. So it's very exciting.
Without like identifying any one thing, I think to give a favorite thing would be to give the general feeling that I think we got, and I hope you all agree with me on this, that something different was happening, that the approach to things was different because of our voices, and that whether it was scrutinizing what was on a piece of land that was potentially up for development, or scrutinizing the ability to get from one side of the street to the other, or the way that we look at consumer protections and animal rights as going hand in hand. These things, got some different exposure and promotion and conversations across the board because we're here, and so it's more than one topic, right? But it was certainly felt like there were days where I'm like, okay, I think this is the first time these people have thought about this, even though for us, it seemed like something it should have been talked about a long time ago. And just celebrating that those in that bureaucracy, that those movements sometimes take time, but hearing that there's a different look at it is, I think, gives me great optimism for next year.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I would have to say in 2021, it's been a learning experience, I think, for all of us. And one of my favorite things about your approach, not just during the Board of County Commission meetings, but even in meetings internally, is that it really feels refreshing to hear that you're really living by the constituents are our boss. And you keep saying that and repeating that because I think procedurally we kind of just get stuck, in how it's always been done. And you really take the time to listen and to reflect and then to vocalize what constituents bring to your attention directly in real time. And that's refreshing because I always wanted to know that elected officials do that. And you're the first example behind the scenes that I've been able to see that actually take place.
It's actually such a great result of a grassroots candidacy, because I got to talk to so many different people. And I don't mean just different people individually, but like different types of people, a diverse range of people with different backgrounds and different occupations and different education levels and different everything. And so I think remembering every day who my boss is a huge part of my job. And then reminding everyone around me in any setting with government that we're all answering to that boss, the people. And democracy is something that I hold near and dear to my heart. We are so lucky to be in the country we're in, but we can't take it for granted. And we have to make sure that we are following those tenets of democracy, which is to listen to the voters if they say something matters to them.
Yeah, and then also, of course, the voiceless that can't speak up for themselves, like our wildlife or our ecosystems. I went back and watched some of the previous administration's videos on the Orange County Video Archive, and very rarely, if at all, during either development votes or just in general, I haven't really seen people bring up, well, what impact is this going to have on our wildlife or our ecosystems or our wetlands? And it almost is striking to see how you're able to bring it up as frequently as you have, but also tie it in directly to other initiatives in the same agenda or other issues in the same agenda, which tie in together, because it's almost like we have short-term memory loss when they're up there on the Board of County Commission dais. They're just kind of like, okay, we're looking at each project in a silo.
Right. Tab 1,
Yeah.
tab 2, tab 3. You're exactly right. And if we talk about a road expansion, then you have to talk about water runoff. And if you talk about water runoff, then you have to talk about groundwater and surface water. And if we're talking about trying to retain water, we have to talk about wetland. If we're talking about wetland, we have to talk about how much of a piece of property is developable. And yes, so all those things have to be talked about and discussed, and decisions have to be made understanding the full spectrum of consequences. I think there is even someone like me who had been on the other side of the dais as an advocate didn't really understand how siloed those issues could be in government. But it requires, I think, a top-down and a bottom-up strategy to try to get those silos, the walls between those silos, broken up, so that any decisions that are made about anything, everything that could be affected by that decision is put on the table. And every 2 weeks, it seems like the conversations when if something comes up and I say, what about, how will this affect such and such? I still hear from my colleagues sometimes, and sometimes from staff members, well, that's not what we're talking about right here. What about? And, I'm going to continue to say back, well, it should be, because it's going to affect that. And if it affects that, then whether you've done this way in the past or not doesn't really matter. Because if we now know it affects it, then we should do this from here on. And, it's another one of those things, I think, hearing the old meetings, and that there was so much that was deferred because a different board made a decision, but we are board. So I hate the idea of shirking my responsibilities because there has been a previous decision made on less information. We have more information now. So revising those decisions, even if it takes a little bit of extra work, and updating those codes and ordinances, it's our responsibility.
So for those of you who might not be as tightly in every single vote, every single BCC meeting, and just continuing to keep an eye on every single update, that's what Commissioner Wilson is trying to do with this office and how she instructs our team to be as transparent as possible and to dissect what's going on behind the scenes for you, the everyday person who has your own obligations, your own responsibilities. We're trying to make it easy for you to know what's going on so that these issues that Commissioner Wilson is championing are explained in a way that you can easily understand them. And then also that you can, in further conversations, vote on or voice your concerns on, because democracy is a verb.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I think about how many wonderful residents that we get to engage with now, sort of on this ongoing kind of friendly basis about issues that are coming up, that it started with a concern that they had in their backyard, on their street. And it turned into really a bigger community conversation, and sometimes a bigger, either policy conversation or future goal conversation, or sometimes we end up seeing them later on appointed to a position on a board, advisory board, because we know that they have an interest in it. And that's what local government should look like, right? It should be completely inclusive, completely transparent, and if you have an interest, then you should be able to participate in whatever way is available. And we're going to continue to try to find those opportunities. But if you are tuning in for the first time, I know that there's always so much coming and going. And sometimes the language, I think, that's used in our code and within our different departments, it's complex, and it should be, because sometimes the issues are complex. But we do not mind. In fact, we like sort of breaking that down. So, call us out for using too many acronyms. Call us out for trying to zoom past something that you think is interesting. We don't mind rewinding and looking at it a little closer. There isn't a week that goes by, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. And I hope that goes on for the rest of my life, because I think that is something that continues to motivate me. But a lot of times it's because of residents that bring forward issues. And so I learn from that and the research that comes behind that. And it's just such an honor to be able to kind of pursue all those different parts of everyone's day-to-day lives that only the local government gets to.
Mm-hmm. And if I can add to that, that's that other voiceless group as well, is there's such a barrier to entry with government. And ironically, especially local government, because in school, we really only talk about federal government, maybe some state, and never really local. And like the commissioner said, there's not an hour, maybe even 30 minutes that goes by that I don't feel like I'm learning something new. And so, as a shameless plug on that note, to looking forward to what we're looking forward to in 2022, and what we're trying to do to increase transparency, is we're going to try to launch an FAQ page on our website, frequently asked questions. And right now, that list looks like, what is the budget? When should I pay attention? How does a development happen? Why do I have a city address, but I live in unincorporated Orange County? All these little questions that nobody talks about that might be unique to even Orange County as a chartered county, which will be in the FAQ page. Feel free to email us and email us and say, I'm confused about this thing. Could you add it to the FAQ page? I feel like my neighbors might be interested too. Don't hesitate to do so. And the whole intention of it is to try to educate people and feel like you can participate.
I love that. I think, even you talk about, so this morning there was a meeting talking about the safety of a crosswalk, and what you realize you end up with in so many of these occasions is more than one layer of government. So your school board is often there. You've got your county government there, because that's our roadway engineering, and your county commissioner's office, but you also get the sheriff's department, or if there's a municipal representative, or the municipal police department. And so, that is their own constitutional officer. And so those different layers, you don't have to worry about that piling up and making no sense. Throw it to us. We will dissect it and find out, who all is there and who should be there. And if there's a problem, who exactly does that go to? And I think, going on up the line to our state representatives, we oftentimes feel like we are really listening to our constituents and moving forward ordinances. I think the retail pet store ordinance was one of those we're doing to really protect consumers and also for the benefit of animal welfare. And there's this constant threat from Tallahassee to pull the rug out from underneath us and preempt, right? So the right to clean water, one of these really grassroots efforts by citizens in Orange County, historic amendment to make sure that our waterways are clean, that our beautiful gems here are clean for the future generations. And citizens came out in record numbers and approved the right to clean water charter amendment. And then Tallahassee representatives, not from here, of course not, but with the governor's help, made sure that it was completely undermined and preempted. And so I also, you all, I think, see a really big role coming into this next phase of a potential legislative, I think, movements to try to make sure we're communicating with everybody out there, our residents, about the things that matter to them that we don't get to make decisions about anymore because a legislator from some other county far away has made a decision for them. And I think, it's really important because these are the things that if we understand going to any election, then we can express those things, right? So if you're voting for your governor, or you're voting for your state legislature, you're voting for your federal representative, you should be able to ask the question, what do you think about our waterways and what have you done to try to help protect them? How do you feel about making sure that our heritage trees are protected? And if they don't give you the answer they don't want, you don't vote for them.
Yeah, and like an example of that, sometimes I have constituents that are saying, my area is getting flooded and I see that the very few empty lots that are left are cited to be developed, or, we have so many staff shortages, but all these developments are still going through. We are preempted from being able to do a building moratorium right now and basically pause and do a reassessment of all the flooding issues that we have, even though it's one of our largest constituent concerns. And so I have to tell constituents directly, like, there's really nothing we can do because all of those developments were approved 10, 15 years ago, and all of that's going to be deforested. That's more runoff, that's more flooding issues, that's more water quality issues happening in your community, and we can't really do anything about it.
Yeah, and I think, it's particularly frustrating when you think about, so there's a very specific preemption that does not permit us to review development plans based on traffic congestion. And, when we hear from residents, one of the most, I think, consistent complaints about development outpacing infrastructure is that there's really big, serious safety issues in traffic. Well, our poor public works department gets the brunt of that anger when really the power above us at the state level has tied our hands. And, I'm a studier of the Florida Constitution. I like to watch what's coming through that legislative body. If there's an opportunity for us to retain power and to use it to help our residents, I'm not giving away that power. So I have to be told very point blank, no, we were preempted on that. And that is exactly what happened when it comes to traffic patterns around potential developments. It can't be the basis for denial. So, having that conversation with residents is very difficult because part of me wants to say, you should ask the person you're voting for at the state level how they feel about this, because it's going to make a huge difference. Well, lo and behold, usually it's not the ones from here that are putting these preemptions forward. And so it's ultimately a little bit like the idea that, that Americans came up with a long time ago of not being governed from afar, right? This idea of small government, of not having someone stomp into your backyard and tell you what to do. Hey, don't tread on me, Tally, is what I want to say, because we have the right really to be able to look at the safety concerns of a particular neighborhood and say, oh my gosh, if we can't get people in and out of that neighborhood or a fire truck in and out of that neighborhood, we can't put any more families in that neighborhood. And effectively what our governor right now and our state legislature have told us is too bad, because making sure that the home builders have made their bottom line is more important to us.
And yet we have one of the highest pedestrian mortality rates of any other county or state in our government. I mean, excuse me, in our country. And it's like people are dying. And if we wanted to do something about it, our hands are tied. It doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't the pedestrian safety be a leading voice in how our state legislature, analyzes what's coming down the line during session?
I think it should be, but the reality of it is that if you have a special interest, which, there are very deep pocketed lobbies that are allowed to walk right into the offices of our state lawmakers and our governor and try to make sure that they're getting their points across, that those deep pockets can oftentimes be the key to a reelection. And quite often pedestrians don't have that voice because, quite frankly, by the time they realize they're at risk, it's too late. And so, my advice whenever I talk to, citizens out and about those issues is, of course, stay plugged in locally and let's see what we can do. I love Hannah, whenever we speak with anybody in the development world, she doesn't hesitate to say, what do the sidewalks look like? Are the sidewalks connecting? Are they going to be wide enough for a stroller and in a wheelchair? She's always looking at those issues and making sure that we can do what we can in this little narrow place that the state seems to want to put us. So we aren't giving up, right? We're not giving up because of preemption. But I think you should ask anybody that you're getting ready to vote for, and I mean from the top down, who's funding your election?
Which is public information.
Public information.
By the way.
If you need help finding it, I've had some practice doing that too. And I think it's something really important. I joke about, you've heard the joke about, that our lawmakers should be like NASCAR and wear patches of their sponsors, right? So you can see the Home Builders Association and Big Sugar and Scott's Lawn Care, whatever, because those decisions should be made with a clear mind for the absolute benefit of all residents. It shouldn't be for a small constituency or support. And so, I'm fortunate because I did really early on say, mine was a very grassroots effort. I'm listening to the residents. I have the support of people locally who understood that I wasn't going to be getting contributions from some of those special interests. So it's pretty easy for me. But I think it gets very cloudy on, and then the higher up you go, I think the cloudier it gets. But we can find out those answers. And I think having the understanding locally about where decisions are coming from, where we've been smacked down, trying to make decisions, and then who influenced that really helps.
Well, I'm very excited for 2022 because it's an election year. So if you want to stay engaged, look up in your community what organizations are helping to kind of break down different policies and different candidates and kind of shine a spotlight on that legislative process. Because if you want to cast a ballot and really be secure in who you're putting your vote towards, there are organizations that's the majority of what they do is to inform you and to help knock on doors and hopefully help you to get registered to vote, which is super important.
I was just going to say, here we are 101 years exactly from the passage of the suffragette where women got the vote, right? And to this day, I think one of the best nonpartisan resources out there is the League of Women Voters. And so, they always do a voter's guide. And a lot of times it's a simple questionnaire. And when I was a candidate, I got the questionnaire and it goes out to everyone. But even when you see a non-response to the League of Women Voters questionnaire, that should tell you something about your candidate. Yeah. And here's my other pitch. Lee, you've heard me say this. Hannah, you've heard me say this. If you have any inclination at all as a citizen to jump in and run for something, do it. Because can you guys hear my dogs?
We can.
Sounds like a party over there.
Rescue hound dogs that sing along to, sometimes if it's like a chime or something, they think it's like a musical instrument. So they were just along out there.
I thought I heard your dog say register to vote.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting about 1,500 people moving here a week, and I feel like many of them might forget to check their voter registration and to make sure it's updated with their new address and check where their voting booth is. And if they can, volunteer, because we're definitely going to need volunteer booth managers. So
And one of the exciting things that happened for me in 2021 was I was appointed to the canvassing board for Orange County Supervisor of Elections office. And so, obviously election integrity and election validity is such a huge priority for me. And democracy, like I said, is, fragile and should be guarded. And I think, just to make sure everyone knows what that means, I will not be able to jump in as far as giving endorsements, offering endorsements or anything like that. But anything that is about the elections and about the voter registration, we will definitely be getting as much information out there as possible. And we will send you in the right direction if you're looking for some of those nonpartisan voter guides. And I think that it's, depending on what is, near and dear to your heart, there's always good resources. Many of the environmental groups do a scorecard. I know the Sierra Club does a scorecard, and the League of Conservation Voters does a scorecard. So, you can always go and check those to see if people align with the things that are important to you. And then I agree, step up and volunteer. It is the coolest thing, I think, to participate in on that day, to see people coming to, the actual ballot box. Something about that just feels like, it's just, always feels historic to me.
Yeah. Well, let's chat a little bit about 2022 and what's coming down the line. If you haven't checked it out, ladies and gentlemen, Hannah put together.
And Lee was instrumental.
Beautiful.
A really great annual report, which I definitely hope you will check out at NicoleWilson.org. Commissioner Hannah and I had a chance to just reminisce on what went through 2021 and just some of the community events and getting to meet constituents. And it was just an awesome year. So
yes, thank you everyone. Thank you guys so much. It's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely check that out. So 2022, some of the things that are in the works right now are like the Fertilizer Ordinance. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that a little bit, because I know it's a huge priority of yours since day one.
Absolutely. It has been a priority for a large group of citizens here in Orange County to try to make sure that we were at bare minimum meeting the standards that have been imposed in our surrounding counties, and especially the counties that have springs in them. And remember, Orange County is part of the Wekiva Spring Shed right in it, and has so many really important assets in our surface waters and our aquifer. So it really updating our fertilizer ordinance, which isn't a flat out ban. It is a ban of certain nutrients in certain times of the year, is really just a bare minimum to get us where we need to be. Because right now, what we do know, and the data is super clear, is that what we're doing is contributing to nutrient loads in our springs and is contributing to the algae outbreak. Now, if you want to follow this chain of thought, what that means is down the river, it's also contributing to the dying of what should be growing in some of these places, which means that we are contributing to the loss of manatee life. And I don't want that on my hands. And I want to make sure that if, speaking of looking at things globally, that we're drawing those connections for people, that looking at this fertilizer ordinance, I understand it's only one piece of a very complex puzzle, but it's a very easy one to make sure that we're getting right, because other counties have already done it.
Yeah, exactly. Green Place was a really great accomplishment in 2021, but I think the conversation moving forward is, developing the advisory board and really doing an assessment on some of the more critically at-risk areas and habitats for our wildlife. Like, these are things that it's just music to my ears to hear that you have the opportunity to vote on and be a part of.
Yeah, so Green Place, for if you're tuning in for the first time, or if that's a new word, it's actually something that was put on the books a long time ago here in Orange County, as they saw the need to stash away environmentally sensitive lands and make sure that we were purchasing and holding in conservation. And obviously we've talked about this here, but the more that we learn about the inherent value of those environmentally fragile spaces, the more important this becomes. So really great that the first year in office, we were able to get that funding reinstituted. And what the goal is that long after we're gone, that there's a mechanism in place and an advisory board in place to capture and hold in conservation environmentally sensitive lands. They need to be really well thought out, right? Because we want to make sure that we have some connectivity. We need to make sure that the sort of environmental interaction with the humans isn't detracting from the asset that is the ecosystem. So those are all things that advisory board, they're going to have to weigh. There's right now sort of a worksheet process that they go through when they assess a piece of property. But the way you can participate as a public citizen is, if you're interested in that board or any other board, fill out an application on our Orange County advisory board webpage. You can check off more than one advisory board for anything that is of interest to you, that you can see as something that is a valuable place for you to contribute. I think this is going to be a hot one as far as getting an appointment to it. It goes to a special group of people who then go through those applications and put people on the board. So that won't come to us. But the more people we have that are truly interested in the inherent value of that environmentally sensitive land, the better chances we have of getting a really great working board. So I would encourage you, even if you think you're late on this, or you don't think you have a chance, go ahead and fill it out. Put your application in.
Yeah. I know that we have budget season coming back, and you already went through one budget season. So I think, you've gotten your feet wet a little bit, what to look out for. And you've mentioned, investments in infrastructure as one of your, guiding motives for, reviewing the budget.
Yeah, we need complete streets yesterday. If I don't ever hear from another person that their sidewalk ends for no good reason, I would be really, really happy. And so those are always going to be top priority. But I also want to make sure that people know we have not forgotten about the high priority of the animal shelter. And we pushed for this the last budget session. I went back and watched old hearings until I found some foothold on something that was already approved, so that we didn't have to start from scratch, and just continuing to sort of push that as a priority. I know that the people in my district and across the county really place a high level priority on animal welfare. So that's going to be a top push, consistently. And then of course, anything that really is an investment in our overall health and safety. And I think that can be, included in making sure that if we can put some more into replanting or retrofitting some of our retaining areas of water to being something more ecologically beneficial, that we're gonna try to make that work.
Yeah, exciting stuff. I know that Vision 2050 is kind of still in the works, and we're definitely going to have a series of opportunities to engage with residents and with staff. Hannah, I know that you are a biker, and you're always a voice for the pedestrians who are putting their lives at risk every day just to get to work or cross the street because maybe they can't afford a car, or they don't have access to individualized transit. They rely on public transit. So maybe you wanted to chat a little bit about your experience with Vision 2050 so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited about Vision 2050. Our planning staff are so ahead of the curve. It's so comforting to feel like, sure, it's taking a little bit, but knowing that we haven't changed our code in 50 years and it might take 50 to change it after, it's worth it. And so, yeah, we learn so much from that every time we have a conversation about Vision 2050. Last time we talked about it, the commissioner and I were begging for a 6-foot sidewalk minimum, I think it was, and lowering the road distance from at least 10 feet to 9 feet to allow for more sidewalk width. And later that day, we went to lunch and measured the width of the sidewalk in downtown Orlando with our feet. And then, we saw the planning director across the street who had told us he did the same thing. So, it's comforting. But yeah, I bike to work every day, and I almost get hit every week, probably. Luckily for me, though, it's kind of a joke, but sometimes you just have to laugh. Is one of the county administrators saw me almost get hit 2 weeks ago. So hopefully now that they've seen it, we can make a little bit more progress on the bike safety, because I think a lot of people forget when you think of cyclists, you think of the groups of people who are in their, garb, and they have really nice bikes. A lot of people don't choose to bike. And I think, we have to think about bike equity and bike as a form of transportation in the same way that we think about bike infrastructure and public transportation infrastructure. Right now, we have a terrible public transportation system. Although we're doing the best we can with the money, they need more money. That it's clear that if you're riding public transportation, it's pretty much always out of need and never out of choice, because why would you? And it risks your life on a bike, right? And in our public transit system, it's inconvenient, it's sometimes unreliable, and it's the same on a bike. So until we, shift the needle to allow people to have convenient, reliable, and safe transportation options, not just cars, we're not going to make headway on climate change. We're not going to make headway on pedestrian and bike safety. We're not going to make Orlando a better place and Orange County a better place to live, because being able to bike to work, even though it stresses me out, adds so much to my quality of life versus sitting in a car.
And think about the islands and isolated places we've created if we don't give somebody that option.
Exactly. So Vision 2050 is
going to enough to have a car in part of your life. It doesn't mean you're always going to have one, right? And it doesn't mean you should assume everybody has one. So the idea of having no alternative to that is just terrifying, that we're isolating people. And it impacts employment ability, impacts education opportunities, impacts, everything across the board. So I don't know, I think there's been some pushback when we even talk about decreasing speed limits in places. And I understand that in some of the instances, it's because it was a convenience issue for someone, but hearing that, that your chance of killing a pedestrian or a biker going this speed changes if you drop 10 miles per hour, and the ability to survive an accident at 10 miles per hour less speed tells me that that's going to be a good policy decision. And I apologize for the inconvenience, but we're always going to go with safety, and we're always going to go with making sure that people can have options to just being single riders in a car. That just it's not sustainable.
And know that the speed limit decreases are sometimes people request them and we don't get them because it doesn't make sense. So it's not like it's a willy-nilly decision. And Vision 2050 is exciting too, because I'm hopeful that it's going to address senior housing requirements, because I think, we really forget about our seniors and our young people and our disabled people in the way that we plan our cities. I mean, I think about my grandmother, who's in excellent health, but can't do anything all day because the only thing she can't do is drive, and what a silly reason to decrease the quality of life. So, I think all of those are going to be taken into account with Vision 2050. And I think it's going to be a really great thing, but there's lots to do in the meantime too, that could be small code adjustments that could really improve people's quality of life as well.
Well, and I think about our engagement at MetroPlan and how exciting that's been. And that the opportunity to speak up and say, so how are we incentivizing mass transit in this decision? And because that once again is our any chance we have to interact with those state agencies and say, okay, well, citizens here in Orange County feel really strongly about having, a safe bike lane or transit options. And I mean, this isn't controversial. These are things I hear about every single day from people across the county. So, we will continue to hammer away at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, our comprehensive planning process is what we're talking about, Vision 2050. For those of you who have never heard of it, please check it out on the Orange County website, and just know that, we are projected to see basically double our population come to Orange County. We can't handle double the cars in our community. And if you have an opportunity to just sit in your car and watch people drive by at an intersection, you'll notice that almost every single car is one individual. And it's just not sustainable by means of space, by means of infrastructure costs, by means of the environment and all the emissions. I mean, all these COVID lines that are taking 5 hours, imagine how many emissions are being pumped into our atmosphere. So I'm very excited to have deeper conversations about infrastructure and transit, and also air quality and the environment, and how that can tie into local policy. And hopefully we can have an election year at the state so that we can get people who will remove those preemptions so we can actually put policies in place here forever.
And I think we also are going to try to highlight our partners in Tallahassee that are of the mindset of
Actually
making
put
sure some of these
policies.
things are a priority, because we do have great legislative partners who do prioritize these things. Unfortunately, a lot of times they're in the minority and they're not being heard, or they they are once again, the special interests seem to push them out of the way. So we're going to try as often as we can to highlight the good work of our legislative partners. And I think also I'm really interested in 2022, once we get over this Omicron hump, of looking forward to, like, the fun gatherings that we can do. And, whether it's a voter registration event that's a fun one somewhere, or, a run on the trail as a group, or a walk on the trail, or a group bike, or, those type of opportunities where we can actually be out and about with the residents.
One last thing about 2022, we are going to be really looking at the process of development in a deeper way. And, something that you brought up, which we've been making videos of recap posts of the Board of County Commission meetings, and Drew, who's on this call helping us, we always highlight Drew because he's awesome. Looking at our conservation areas and our wetlands and how we assess them prior to a rezoning or prior to designating on a future land use map what that land, how we purchased and sold and marked for. It's something right now that when we're looking at statistics about biodiversity loss and looking at climate change and how our developments are impacting or flooding in certain areas of the county, that process of doing a really good assessment prior to chopping it up, dividing it, and selling it for profit is one of the largest things that I think, if you could I'm just going to put this in words in your mouth,
right.
But I think it's the most important thing you could do.
Well, you're restating my argument that I made during the BCC discussion about wetland code. And I tried to sort of make it in more than one way, because I wasn't sure if it was being processed the way that I wanted it to be processed. And what I've noticed since I've really been engaging in the development process is that once something has been platted and zoned, then there is an assumption that that particular density is owed to the property owner, so that when you find out after there's been an assessment and evaluation of the environment that there's something valuable on that land, whether it is a wetland or some other valuable upland feature, or potentially even some old growth, that somehow them being able to do whatever they want to there is part of it. Would be unreasonable, basically, under the code, to say they couldn't do that. And so that reasonableness factor that goes in our code that allows development where there is an environmental feature that I believe has the same value, if not a greater value, of whatever it is that's planned to go there. And so the only way, we can have a tug of war forever about what's more valuable, what I want to put on it, or the ecological feature, right? But the reality of it is, unless we know before the very first decision is made about what can go there, then that's always going to be that tug of war. And that tug of war is never going to be fair, right? Because you don't have as many voices on the ecological side as you have on the development side. So the reality is, before we ever plat, before we ever rezone, if we know that a certain amount of that is something very valuable, the asset itself is ecologically really valuable, then that should be known from the get-go, so that nobody can come back and say, you preventing me from putting my warehouse there is unreasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And, and fully, it is part of our responsibility, right? I'm not throwing this one back at a property owner, because if they bought that and it was on paper as being zoned warehouse, and they have 5 acres and all 5 acres were zoned warehouse, then how are they supposed to know that 3 of those acres were something really valuable ecologically? So that's on us. And that was what I tried really hard to get at the wetland code discussion. And I think we're going to be able to round back on that and try to articulate better maybe opportunities to incorporate the right to clean water charter amendment in order to make sure that the spirit of that charter amendment is identified and utilized every chance we get. Because I understand that the actual amendment itself technically may have been preempted by the state. It's being challenged right now, but nothing prevents us from making sure that we are upholding the spirit of that by adding those layers within our development process. So that's really the goal.
Yeah, and just one other point to when you brought up value, right? It's not even just monetary value, or if we're looking at how a development could increase value here versus the ecological value, there's also no quantification of the cost of any issues that might come up, like the cost of flooding.
Yeah.
That is something that, you know, I try my best to explain to constituents. Like around Big Sand Lake, there's been hundreds of people, hundreds of emails, hundreds of calls of people who are very concerned that the water levels are very, very high. And yet the county doesn't necessarily have the means to do an extreme pumping project, but yet a lot of the parcels around Big Sand Lake are already bought and sold and cited to be developed. And so that means more runoff and more impermeable surfaces that the bill is going to trickle down to the taxpayers.
Right.
And we're not able to really increase our impact fees. So there's just these conversations that you're championing that I'm just so proud that you're able to vocalize.
Well, thank you, Lee. I know that it helps me to hear you restate it in those ways too, because you speak with our constituents every day and have a kind of a front row seat to the struggles they have when they drive out of their driveway, and the changes they've seen as those paved areas have gotten wider and wider, and what it's done to the water levels and the water quality. And, you know, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like there's so much to be optimistic about in that we understand better how to remediate some of the areas and some of the things that are a problem, you know, in our environment. But it's so much less expensive and less burdensome to protect them from the onset, you know, and it absolutely blows my mind that we seem to do all this stuff on the back end when preventative medicine would have really been so much better of a plan, you know, when you look at just tax money and saving tax money. So we'll just keep trying to hammer away at trying to draw those pieces together. And I think your work with the Big Sand Lake Advisory Board this year has been tireless. I can't give you a standing round of applause for it, but it has been, you know, something that, and I know there's a long way to go as far as being able to achieve some of the things they've put in their line item and making sure that we're fulfilling sort of the goals of the Big Sand Lake Advisory Board. But oh my goodness, as far as being able to gather everyone we needed from the county that needed to be in one room to try to push that forward, could not have done it without you. So thank you, Lee Perry.
Oh, I love talking to the constituents, despite the fact that sometimes I feel really like I wish I could physically with my own hands fix a problem. It can be frustrating at times, but I think people are relieved at how quick we are to pick up the phone or attend a meeting or just answer an email and just be honest about the fact that the process is very complicated or that there's certain obstacles from being able to accomplish certain tasks. And so I just really treasure the opportunity to get to turn someone's really bad day into something positive, despite not being able to have a direct solution that day. But, you know, these videos, your transparency, you vocalizing things on the dais and being able to just have these incredible newsletters from Hannah, it's all a process of setting the bar where I've always felt politics should be, which is just engaging constituents, being an open door and fully transparent. And so by running a grassroots campaign, Commissioner, you did it, you set that bar, and now hopefully 2022, other elected, soon to be elected officials, other candidates will look at your success and have that same level of transparency, I hope.
I hope so. I think we should hold them to it. I love it also. I love that you all get it and that you're on board with it because, being scrutinized is uncomfortable for some people, but I think in this role, knowing that we're sitting in the people seat, that we are, really just a voice for them, even if they don't have the ability to be a voice, that is, that's our team. And it's a great mission, right? Because it feels to me very directed when things get really complicated and things get really fuzzy around the edges about, like, the bureaucratic beatdown is what I call it. I'm like, but you know what I know out there is that we have residents and citizens that are relying on us to be engaged, open door, air it all out in the sunshine. And so it makes it very, I like it. It makes me feel very goal oriented, even when sometimes the goals start feeling like they're really far away. And so, that transparency component, we'll just continue to find other ways to engage. And it's something that we'll just keep on growing.
Well, with the last few minutes here, I just wanted to say, we're starting with interns on Monday. We're very excited to bring the next generation to the table when it comes to the process of local government and being able to, the decisions that you make, Commissioner, directly impact the people who are next in line to run our country. And, they need to be brought to the table. So internships create a pipeline of that engagement. And also, hopefully, future leaders will come from these types of programs. So our internship program starts on Monday. And one of the things that you've directed us to prioritize is HOA and different association outreach to try and help them, guide them to having more sustainable practices, but also just to say, hey, we're here listening. What can we do to help you today?
Right. It's another avenue. And I think it's interesting. I shared a visual image recently of some sustainable lawn care practices. And it was interesting that there was a couple of people who weighed in, who were names I wasn't familiar. They weren't people that I had met personally recently, that said, well, you got to start with the HOAs. Well, this isn't going to work because HOAs tell us what we have to do. And I thought, well, what's interesting, I'm getting the feedback that I feel like I've kind of known for a little while, which is we don't have the ability to dictate to HOAs some of the things that we can really talk about in the unincorporated Orange County, but what we can do is make an educational partnership and take that transparency to a different level and try to make sure that we're creating maybe, some structure that they can then bring and then leave for future entities that will be there, because the HOAs turn over just like local governments turn over. And so sometimes that changing of the guard and bringing in new HOA members or new HOA subcommittees that are interested in things like sustainable yards or Florida friendly plantings and trying to be a resource for them. So I'm really looking forward to working on that.
Yay.
Definitely. I just want to say that the newsletter for Tuesday will be going out today. So if you're watching and you're not in our newsletter, please make sure to sign up so you can receive the legislative updates for Tuesday. There's a lot going on, and it should be pretty exciting, particularly the tree preservation and removal ordinance.
Yeah, we're talking about it on Tuesday. This has been one really long in the pipeline. And for those people out here in District 1 who feel the pain I feel when they see a mask raiding, mask grubbing, this is what what spurred so many conversations and some really heated debates within the county, and me trying to say we can't do this. The county commissioners aren't even having opportunity to review where mask raiding and mask grubbing is happening. So this tree ordinance and the update to that language is a product of much of that frustration. So please tune in for that.
Terrific. All right. Any closing remarks, Commissioner, to the public who are tuning in with us today?
I just thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for going along on this journey of improving your community. Stay with us, even on the tough days. We need you. And so please stay engaged. Reach out if you have any questions.
Please see our annual report.
Yes.
It's like the proudest project.
Please email district1@ocfl.net if you have any questions. And we just thank you all so much for continuing to engage with the District 1 office. We're looking forward to another really exciting year.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, my wonderful team. I couldn't do it.
Thank you.
So grateful.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Drew.